but you still might not know about her extensive training. So Reverend Chimyo Simone Atkinson was ordained by the Reverend Teijo Munnich in 2007 and received Dharma Transmission in 2015. I just had to let somebody in. She received her monastic training at Great Tree and completed Sotoshu International training periods in Japan in 2010 and 11. And she also completed training periods at the Aichi Senmon Nisodo in Nagoya in 2012 and the Ryumonji Monastery in Iowa in 2014. So she's here to give us a talk titled Winter Zazen this morning. I always appreciated her faithful practice and her teaching when she was here at Great Tree, and really look forward to hearing her talk today.
And I just want to remind everyone that this is being recorded this morning, but we have the Chimyo pinned and myself and Ann right now, so you won't show up on the screen. And this will be put on YouTube later so that we can revisit it for people that are not able to attend this morning, so that they can see it later. And I just want to read a brief statement about dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, such as Chimyo this morning, to support places of spiritual practice like Great Tree, and to give without judgment of expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. And so there is a link in the chat so that you can practice dana. And if it's for Chimyo, you can just send it through the same link through Great Tree and just specify that it's for Chimyo. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Please let me know if you can't. Just to let you know, I have a wacky setup here with the internet in this building. So please excuse me if things freeze or whatever. I'll be right back, I promise. Again, very nice to see all your faces this morning. I titled this talk Winter Zazen a long time ago. And as you do when you do something, way far ahead and you start thinking about it, especially if you're an overthinker like me, by the time you get to the point where you're actually talking about it, you have no idea what you're talking about. Or it feels like it anyway. When I say Winter Zazen, what I'm thinking about is, well, let me just start. I had the absolute privilege of doing sesshin at Hokyoji Zen Monastery, at Zen Practice Center, I think is the official name, out in Minnesota last year. And of course, last year seems like a billion years ago. And for those of you who might not know, there are a couple of faces here that I know are familiar with Hokyoji, who've been there before. Hokyoji is Katagiri's, Katagiri Roshi's monastery out in Minnesota, out in the wilds of Minnesota. And it's the place where Teijo practiced with Katagiri, as well as a number of teachers that have come and been associated with us at Great Tree and come through and visited us, including Shokin and maybe a few others. Just to give a plug, this whole year is going to be a year in which we get visits, particularly on these Saturday morning sessions of teachers who are connected to Katagiri Roshi, who are basically Teijo's Dharma brothers and sisters. And I really encourage you to take the opportunity to see those talks during the year. Take a look at our schedule and our calendar about that. They are definitely people that, because we are all in this tradition, we should at least know about and meet in some way, if possible. But Hokyoji, before I digress, is way out in the boonies in Minnesota. The first time I visited Hokyoji was in the summer, I think. And it was hot and, it's very rural, cornfields. It's rural to me, I'm from Brooklyn, sorry. It is rural, cornfields and cows and tractors on the roads and those kinds of things. Midwestern flat with bumps, big bumps of hills and bluffs and that just seem to rise up out of the ground for no good reason. I'm not a geologist, so it looks mad to me, this great big plain of flat and then this great big burst of rock on the horizon is how I would describe that area. It's beautiful. In the summer, we met some folks out there and on a very short visit. And the abbot came out and he was covered head to toe. He had on long sleeves. He had his pants tucked into his socks to, protect himself from the mosquitoes in summer. But even in the summer, as we, rode through the trees and walked over the land, I'd say this, you could see or kind of feel the winter, kind of peeking out behind the screen of the summer trees, leafed out trees. And you could just tell that winter's waiting there. It's any other type of rural or farmland, I would imagine. The timing of the change of the weather runs everything, influences everything. And that there's always this wait or this anticipation of the frost coming and that long winter that lasts for many more months than it does in North Carolina. When I visited last year, it was in February, which is midwinter. And I got off the plane and there's snow. And then when I got to the monastery the next day, the temperature plummeted to 17 below. I had never experienced 17 below before. So when you say that number to me, you know, I have no idea what to think. But really, I was surprised when I walked out that evening for dinner into the 17 below, and, you know, at least a good 6 to 10 inches of snow right there on the path to from the dorm to the kuin, or to the dining hall. I was surprised. I didn't immediately freeze to a block of ice, you know. In fact, I walked out and, you know, this gentle snow was falling all around. And I looked up into the trees and, you know, saw this beautiful glittering sky full of ice and snowflakes. And the sound and the feel of snow crunching beneath my boots. And yeah, my face stung a little bit, but there was a pleasantness that connected to the beauty of all this freezing environment around me. I'd experienced, you know, harsh winters in Zazen before at the monastery in Japan. And although it was a very different, you know, it looked very different than the mountain in Japan, there was that same flavor, not as harsh as your expectation is of that cold, that deep, deep cold. On the mountain and I was in Japan, you know, it's been 10 years now, at a place called Shogoji. And there was one day that we walked out onto snow, you know, and there was at least 10 inches out there too. And there was a great white crane, you know, just standing on the road, and it took off. And that was the beauty of that harsh winter, and the beauty of this harsh winter at Hokyoji, that settled me in a way, you know, where all my expectations and my fears about the cold and what I thought it meant got shoved aside by the reality of what it is. Now, the reality is also that it was freaking cold. And the next morning when I got up, I, you know, walking to the zendo from the dorm, which was a little bit further than to the dining hall, you know, in the early morning when it's still a little dark, with a flashlight that, you know, was barely, you know, working. And following the path of, you know, I assumed it was the Shinrei, the person that rang the morning bell, following the path of their footsteps to the zendo, and stumbling along that path that was not really familiar to me. Getting in there and having the bottom of my kimono, you know, soaking wet, you know, once I got into the relative warmth of the zendo, and that snow that had gathered at the hem started melting. And going into the zendo, and it's still cold. You have the space heaters there, but it's still a little cold. No, it's still a lot cold. Because they haven't had a chance, even though we may have been on for an hour, they haven't had a chance to really heat up the room to a point where you're absolutely comfortable in there. And I went in, and there were people sitting with hats and mufflers on. And I didn't think to do that because that's not what I generally do. I wasn't, we sometimes do so in Great Tree, but it didn't even occur to me to take anything to wrap around myself. So I just had my wet kimono and my robes and me. And I went and sat in the space that they gave me. And I remember behind me, I'm sitting facing inward because I was given I was expected to teach there. And so I was given a seat and told to face outward. I could hear behind me the wind whistling through some hole outside or in the wall or some pipe somewhere. The sound of that cold, cold, cold wind. And sitting there and being deeply cold. There's something to be said for feeling a little discomfort in Zazen. Zazen is not really a blanket that you sit in comfort all the time. There are times when that is how it feels and that's what it is for you. But really, there's a little discomfort that helps me anyway in my Zazen. When you're sitting there in the cold, feeling that wet kimono under my feet, feeling the chill of the air around me. There's this sort of temptation to run. There's this temptation to get up and go back to the dorm and get your hat. There's a temptation to, I am an expert at building fantasy worlds. I can build a little fantasy and crawl right in it and fall right to sleep. If I'm not making the effort to be there, or if something frightens me, or if something feels the discomfort is something I'm not willing to deal with. And so there's a choice that I kind of made sitting there to just sit. To just sit and absorb that cold and absorb those conditions and know those conditions. When I fall asleep or when I do that avoiding thing, and for whatever reason during Zazen, whether it's cold or whether I'm just not feeling well or feel sleepy, when I do that, I find that every time, the bell rings, at the point where the bell rings to end Zazen, I'm getting up stumbling. I'm getting up without having lost consciousness of my own body, of my own mind. It's the confusion of discomfort and whatever I built around me, separating me from the world, that confusion. And when I do make the effort that, Dogen talks about, is spoken of in the, Eightfold Path, and not that I'm not even billing this as some kind of success, but when I do make the effort and I approach the conditions that I'm in. When that bell rings, I'm still there. I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't run anywhere. And I'm in the room and I'm noticing, that maybe my foot's asleep and I can get up with a little bit of dignity, a little bit of awareness, being cognizant of my surroundings and my own self. That's a simplistic way of putting what Zazen can be. But really, Zazen brings us not only to our body and to the conditions surrounding that body, that cold, that wind, the fact that your foot's asleep. It helps to drop the boundaries between this limited self and the greater universe around us, and makes us more a part of it, or makes us know bust the delusion that we are not a part of it, that we are separate from it. The cold is a beautiful thing. It touches your skin in the same way that warmth touches your skin. But see, the only difference is Chimyo's like or Chimyo's dislike is interfering with that touch. The sensation of the cold on your face, on your lips, is a message. It's a message that, speaks volumes of everything that is out there, that is painful, that is beautiful, that is distressing, everything, But what makes it painful, beautiful, and distressing is that interference that we put up that says, I don't want to deal with this. I want it to be this way. I am so glad that I experienced 17 below. I kind of call it my 17 below session. Because whatever fears or whatever ideas I had about 17 below, if I had listened to that fantasy, to that delusion, I never would have gone. And I never would have known. And I would never have seen the sky glistening with tiny particles of ice. And I never would have sat in Katagiri Zendo with those people and felt the air, the cold, cold air touch my face. Now, I'm not advocating that we go out and sit in the cold, sit in a pile of snow, or anything drastic like that. But to sit in a cold room, provided that you are, and then part of the knowledge of sitting anywhere in any condition is to be aware of your own condition. I'm not saying you should sit in a cold room if you're sick. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't turn heat up or get your blanket or go back to the dorm and get your hat. All of those things are all possibilities, and you have to look, at your own situation. But really look at that situation and ask the question, is this going to end me if I sit here in this cold for 40 minutes? Or is this something that I need to taste for a minute? And this is not simply, and I'm trying to get to, not very good at this. I'm trying to get to how this is expressed in our daily lives, not just Zazen, but in all parts of our lives. This little discomfort, this little bit of something that I didn't expect or didn't want or think I don't like, that I don't want to give a chance to touch me and inform me. It must be the way I need it to be. It must be comfortable for me. It can't be strange. I can't have to, I don't want to have to look at my own fear. I don't want to have to look at my own bias. I just want it to be the way I need it to be. I want it to be. I think I need it to be. But what we need it to be is something that will open our hearts a little bit more, even to the cold, even to 17 below. It's dropping away body and mind and just being with it, just sitting with it. We have the expression in Zen, shikantaza. This is just sitting. This is just being there, And it doesn't matter if when the bell rings, you get up and you decide you need to go and put on another sweater. That's another moment. That's another opportunity to experience something. But don't run. Don't run from the cold. There is no such thing as winter zazen. That's a title I made up. If that's the case, then everything is winter zazen. Even the heat, the discomfort of heat, the discomfort of cold, the discomfort of sitting next to somebody you had just had a fight with, the discomfort of feeling that or having things going on in your life and having to sit as those things unfold that in a way that is not what you planned. The discomfort of loss, the absolute pain of loss. All of those things are winter zazen. All of those things are the cold on your face, trying to show you something, trying to make you look up and see it, literally. I think that's where I stopped here. I'm trying not to sit and read stuff to you. And I think that's where I stopped. But I don't know if you know what I mean. Because even in that deadly cold, to 17 below, you can die in 17 below. You stand there long enough. If you look up and you pay attention and you really feel it and you move appropriately within those conditions, you'll discover so much. you'll uncover so much in this practice. So I'm going to stop there so I don't start rambling and take up all the time, that you might want to say something. So thank you very much. And please, if you have something you'd like to say or questions you'd like to ask, whether it's connected to whatever I was blabbing about or not, please do.